When the man woke up, he found himself in the stomach of a monster. Fortunately, the Mandalorian armor on his body worked. It barely resisted the erosion of the gastric acid. He used all his strength to pierce through the stomach wall of the giant beast, and struggled to climb out of the sandy passage. At this time, the armor had become tattered, and the previous struggle had exhausted all his strength. Then he fainted. However, the arrival of a special race plunged the man into a new crisis. Again, the man's name is Boba Fett, and he is a space bounty hunter. But how could he end up in such a sorry state now? This has to start with a planet named Tatooine. At this moment, on this desert planet on the edge of the universe, suddenly, a commotion came from the desert. A tracked vehicle slowly approached. The Jawas who made a living by scavenging got off the vehicle. They saw Boba, who was lying unconscious on the ground, and had the idea of taking possession of his equipment. In the blink of an eye, Boba's helmet, armor, and the weapons on his arm were all looted by the other side. Just then, Boba's hand suddenly moved. The Jawas panicked and knocked him unconscious. Fortunately, these Jawas were only interested in property. After confirming that Boba had no ability to resist, they drove away. The next day, there was a strong wind in the desert. For Tusken Raiders gradually approached Boba in the wind and sand. They turned over the unconscious Boba, and were surprised to find that he still had a little breath left. The Tusken Raiders tied his hands with a rope, then they squeezed out the protein from a worm, and fed it into Boba's mouth in an attempt to wake him up. Then they dragged Boba through the yellow sand. But at this moment, he was so exhausted that he had no strength to resist. It was already late at night when Boba woke up again. He found himself tied to a wooden stake, and there was also a green alien tied next to him, and there was only a sand dog guarding them. It turned out that the Tusken Raiders just regarded the captives as slaves. Looking at the sleeping sand dog, Boba was thinking about how to seize the opportunity to escape. However, the slight friction sound still woke up the sand dog named Bantha. Boba continued to speed up his movements with his hands, but unexpectedly, the Bantha suddenly opened its huge mouth and slowly approached. The green alien's eyes widened in fear. At this critical moment, Boba suddenly choked the Bantha's neck. He took the opportunity to knock it unconscious with force, and cut the rope with its sharp teeth. Looking at the green alien next to him, Boba planned to save him as well, but as soon as the green alien opened his mouth to speak, he attracted the attention of the Tusken Raiders. Boba pushed down the pursuing Tusken Raider, but he found that the other party was just a child. He was so soft-hearted that he couldn't bring himself to do it. But in the next moment, more Tusken Raiders swarmed in. Boba had to flee in a hurry. At this time, the Bantha also resumed its movement and chased closely behind him. But Boba's body was too weak. He was knocked down to the ground by the Bantha before running far. The Tusken Raiders arrived and kicked him unconscious. Early the next morning, the children among the Tusken Raiders took Boba and the green alien to look for water. To prevent them from escaping, the Tusken Raiders put ankle chains on the two. When they arrived at the water source, they were stunned by the scene in front of them. The water station had been ransacked by the robbers. The robbers also left their unique mark when they left. Without a water source, they could only make the two slaves dig for sand fruits. The Bantha led them to a sand dune with its keen sense of smell. Before long, the green alien dug out sand fruits from the soil. Who would have thought, in this harsh desert environment, there were actually sand fruits rich in water? But the Tusken Raiders would rather pour water for the Bantha than give Boba a sip. Just like this, they kept digging for sand fruits in the endless desert. Boba looked at the cowardly green alien. The anger in his heart was burning more and more fiercely. If it weren't for the green alien making a sound before, he could have successfully escaped from this planet. Boba was so angry that he wanted to strangle him with the ankle chain. Just as the two were arguing, the green alien dug up a black object. He curiously sped up the digging speed. The scales of a creature gradually emerged from the sand. Suddenly, the sand quickly subsided and the monster burst out of the sand. The next second, it grabbed the green alien's arm. Then it stretched out another hand and choked his neck. This sudden change shocked both Boba and the Tusken Raiders. Then the monster stretched out its third hand and grabbed the ankle chain on Boba. It also stretched out its fourth claw in front of him. It turned out that this was a four-clawed monster that had been sleeping in the desert. After being awakened, it roared angrily. Obviously, it was very dissatisfied with someone disturbing its nap. The more it looked at the green alien, the more unpleasant it felt. It grabbed him and pressed him to the ground. Just as it was about to kill the green alien, the Bantha rushed over and bit the monster. Facing so many unexpected guests, the four-legged beast didn't know who to deal with first for a moment. First, it slapped the Bantha flying, and punched the green alien into the sand with both fists. Then it approached Boba. At a critical moment, the Tusken Raider bravely stabbed the monster's foot with a sharp wooden stick. But the young Tusken Raider was too weak, and was slapped flying by the monster. Boba took the opportunity to throw out the iron chain, and wrap it around the monster's arm. Unfortunately, the monster was too strong and didn't move at all. It punched Boba flying with one punch. The monster pulled out the sharp thorn on its foot, roaring. It walked towards the Tusken Raider child. The monster quickly caught up. It grabbed one of his legs and was about to put it in its mouth. At a critical moment, Boba climbed up on the monster's back, choked its neck with the iron chain, and pulled backward with all his strength. The monster struggled desperately and scratched around, but could never reach Boba. He wrapped the iron chain around a few more times, and tightened it even more. Finally, the monster gradually suffocated. After twitching a few times, it lost its breath. Boba was already physically and mentally exhausted at this moment. Under the blazing sun, the figure of him, a bald slave, became extremely tall in the eyes of the young Tusken Raider. Then they carried the monster's head back to the tribe, and excitedly told his tribe members about the adventure just now, telling everyone that it was Boba who eliminated the monster. In the hearts of the Tusken Raiders, the person who could kill the monster was definitely a remarkable warrior. Then the clan leader walked up to Boba, and personally handed him a sand fruit. From this moment on, Boba felt the recognition of the Tusken Raiders. The next day, the Tusken Raiders enthusiastically invited Boba to practice martial arts. Boba, who had just arrived, didn't know much about their rules. Due to a mistake during the practice, he received a solid slap on the face. But Boba didn't feel any anger at all. Instead, he humbly asked for advice. This kind of attitude allowed him to quickly integrate into the Tusken Raider group. The children hid aside and curiously looked at this new member. Suddenly, a sound came from under the sand. A sand rabbit was frightened and fled. The Tusken Raider took out a long gun and shot the sand rabbit. Everyone was about to go and get the prey, but a dull rumble came from a distance. The faces of the Tusken Raiders instantly turned pale with fear. Boba wondered in his heart if there was another terrifying monster. Soon, an iron dragon train rushed over at high speed. Just as Boba was about to get closer to check, a laser shot over and hit the horned beast behind him. Then, one after another, the Tusken Raiders let out screams and fell down. Boba realized the danger. He quickly told everyone to hide behind the horned beast. Under the intensive laser bombardment of the Iron Dragon, the Tusken Raiders suffered heavy casualties. The battle didn't subside until the Iron Dragon left. Boba looked at the corpses all over the place with a heavy heart. He understood that the Tusken Raiders were often massacred by the Iron Dragon due to their backward technology. If it weren't for their rescue at the beginning, he would have already lost his life. Now, as a member of the tribe, Boba was determined to help them fight back. But without advanced equipment, everything was just empty talk. At this time, Boba saw a group of robbers riding desert motorcycles roaring past. A bold idea flashed through his mind. Boba borrowed a blaster and went to the small tavern alone. A couple was dating in the tavern. After the members of the robber gang came in, they ate the snacks on the table without hesitation, also snatched the man's drink and drank it up in one gulp. Then they returned the remaining cup to the man. The man muttered softly that the other party was like a beast, but it was heard by the robber. The robber threatened him viciously. The man didn't want to lose face in front of his girlfriend. He actually stood up, and the atmosphere became tense instantly. At this time, a strong man came over and grabbed the man's collar. He poked the man's stomach with a stun baton. The girlfriend wasn't spared either. Just then, Boba pushed the door open and entered. His cold and stern aura made the tavern quiet instantly. The robbers sensed the danger, and picked up their weapons one after another. The leading strongman rushed towards Boba first, but he was punched in the nose by Boba. The accomplice next to him was just about to draw his gun. Boba quickly fired and knocked him down. Then he smashed the stock of the blaster at the others. Soon, all the robbers were dealt with. After drinking a glass of wine, Boba walked out of the tavern. Boba's real purpose wasn't to teach the robber gang a lesson, it was to come and confiscate their desert motorcycles. He wanted to use these equipment to help the Tusken Raiders, and rushed back to the tribe with the spoils. After the band, they issued an alarm. The tribe members went on alert. After seeing that the person coming was Boba through the telescope, everyone relaxed. Boba parked the motorcycles in front of the tribe members. He was just about to explain to the clan leader, but he saw the desire for the value of scrap iron shining in the eyes of the other tribe members. They already planned to disassemble the motorcycles and sell them as scrap iron. Boba quickly dissuaded them, telling the clan leader that these motorcycles could help them defeat the Iron Dragon. The clan leader thought for a moment, and then turned around and left. It could be regarded as an approval of Boba's idea. Then Boba jumped onto the motorcycle and demonstrated the operation method to the tribe members, but the Tusken Raiders knew nothing about high technology. Boba said that as long as they regarded the motorcycle as a horse, the operation method was similar to riding a horse. The tribe members understood then. A child climbed onto the motorcycle excitedly, although his expression couldn't be seen clearly. From his slightly trembling hands, it could be seen that he was both nervous and expectant. Day by day passed. Under Boba's instruction, the Tusken Raiders gradually learned to drive the motorcycles. They drove the motorcycles and drifted flexibly in the desert. At the same time, under the guidance of the Tusken Raiders, Boba's close combat ability was greatly improved. On this day, the Tusken Raider child in charge of Lookout saw the Iron Dragon appear again through the telescope. he immediately issued an alarm. The tribe instantly entered a state of readiness for battle. An ultra-lone maglev train was speeding through the desert. The people on the train opened the windows. They picked up long guns and aimed at the Tusken Raiders. In the past, these guys regarded the Tusken Raiders as live targets and shot at them wantonly, but now, with Boba leading them, the Tusken Raiders had the ability to resist. At Boba's command, the motorcycle team quickly followed. The tribe members in the rear provided fire cover. The enemies on the Iron Dragon discovered them. Intensive gunshots rang out immediately. Even with the protection of the motorcycles, the Tusken Raiders still had difficulty fending off the attacks. Fortunately, at a critical moment, a tribe member used a mirror to reflect light and send a signal. Everyone immediately concentrated their firepower to clear the obstacles in front. After dealing with the first wave of threats, Boba signaled the team to stay away from the train. They threw out grappling hooks and climbed onto the train, but the climbing process wasn't smooth. Some Tusken Raiders were killed while climbing. Boba's motorcycle was also hit by bullets. Fortunately, the shooter in the dark timely suppressed the enemy and saved Boba. When Boba saw his teammate in danger, he pulled him onto the train. At this time, the motorcycle was seriously damaged. Boba hung the grappling hook on the Iron Dragon. He and his teammate jumped and escaped from the danger. At this time, the enemy was sticking his head out to check, but was knocked into the sea of sand by Boba with the grappling rod. After boarding the Iron Dragon, the top priority was to control the front of the train and stop it. Boba led the team and quickly advanced towards the front of the train. They cleared the obstacles along the way. Just when they were about to reach the front of the train, several enemies holding laser guns suddenly appeared. The fire suppression made it difficult for Boba and the others to fight back. They only had one blaster, and the situation was critical. Just then, the second-in-command of the Tusken Raiders drove the motorcycle and arrived. He increased the power, and grabbed the front carriage just before the impact. Then all the rear carriages of the Iron Dragon fell off. Seeing this situation, the driver quickly retreated back into the cabin. He immediately operated the console to increase the power. The speed of the Iron Dragon increased sharply. The second-in-command was almost thrown flying. Fortunately, he got into the carriage in time. Inside the carriage, the Tusken Raiders gave full play to their close combat skills. They eliminated the enemies holding laser guns. After having eye contact with Boba, they dealt with another two enemies. Boba took the opportunity to attack the front of the train. The driver operated frantically in an attempt to increase the speed. Boba sensed something was wrong and was about to give a warning. Unexpectedly, the driver had already pushed out the acceleration lever. The powerful airflow blew Boba's teammate off the Iron Dragon, and he disappeared into the desert. Boba, filled with grief and indignation, rushed towards the front of the train and broke through the window. But the driver took advantage of Boba's distraction, and opened the window to escape. After rolling hundreds of meters in the desert, he was actually unharmed. At this time, the engine of the Iron Dragon was overloaded. The console short-circuited and the engine caught fire. In a critical moment, Boba used the grappling rod as a lever. He used all his strength to pry the speed reducer. The engine finally began to slow down, but the train also lost its levitation power as a result. It crashed straight into the sand. As the frictional force decreased, the Iron Dragon finally stopped. The Tusken Raiders cheered and rushed towards the Iron Dragon. They obtained a large number of advanced equipment and weapons. Boba took the sand fruit handed to him by the Tusken Raider, and he asked the captive kneeling in front of him who their leader was. The leader had to stand up and take off his mask. It turned out that they were the Pike Syndicate from the solar system, who made a living by selling addictive spices. Boba demanded that they hand over the toll fee every month. As compensation for hunting the Tusken Raiders in the past, the Pike Syndicate had to agree in order to save their lives. After this battle, the Tusken Raiders obtained a large amount of water and a huge amount of compensation. They were very happy, and Boba also became a hero in the hearts of the Tusken Raiders. With his wisdom and courage, at night, the desert fell into silence. The clan leader of the Tusken Raiders approached Boba and handed him a gift. Boba opened it. A small lizard emitting a strange luster appeared in front of him. The clan leader said that this lizard could guide him. As soon as he finished speaking, the lizard jumped onto Boba's nose tip. Then it got into his head. The next second, Boba felt an excruciating headache, as if being pierced by thousands of steel needles. Then he fainted. When he woke up again, Boba stood up unsteadily. He tried hard to open his eyes and saw that above the surging sea, an ancient divine tree rose from the ground. The dizziness in his head made it difficult for him to distinguish between reality and a dream. Boba approached the divine tree. The branches instantly wrapped around him tightly. At this moment, his memory was awakened. He remembered that he was the famous bounty hunter Boba Fett. 2 years ago, he was swallowed into the stomach of a terrifying giant beast. He resisted the gastric acid with his sturdy armor. In the dark, he turned on the searchlight of his armor, and found a body of a dead armored soldier. He pulled out the other party's breathing tube to replenish the oxygen for his armor. Then he punched through the stomach wall. He used the blaster to burn out an escape hole, and thus managed to escape from death. But the memory was suddenly interrupted by the branches of the divine tree. Boba angrily broke the branches. After dawn, a bantha sensed something was wrong. It growled towards the distance. The Tusken Raider child looked in that direction, shouting in surprise that Boba was back. Everyone looked at Boba. It could be seen from their expressions. Everyone thought that it was a miracle that Boba came back alive. Then the clan leader took out a specially made cage. The lizard got into it obediently. Boba took out the branches of the ancient divine tree. The clan leader understood that Boba had passed the ultimate test of the Tusken Raiders. Then he arranged for the tribe members to take Boba into the tent, and changed him into the clothing of the Tusken Raiders. Then the clan leader personally put the headscarf symbolizing honor on Boba, putting on the black battle robe. Boba officially became a member of the Tusken Raiders. After that, everyone came to the weapon forging place. Under the guidance of the blacksmith, Boba forged weapons with the branches of the ancient divine tree. He concentrated on polishing and carving. After repeated tempering, a unique weapon that combined the characteristics of an axe and a long spear came into being. A week passed by in the blink of an eye. However, the compensation promised by the Pike Syndicate had never been fulfilled. Helplessly, Boba had to go as a representative of the Tusken Raiders. To urge the Pike Syndicate to fulfill their promise, he rode a bandit and crossed the vast desert, and finally arrived at the territory of the Pike Syndicate. On the way, he also met two Jawas who made a living by scavenging. After arriving at the destination, Boba tied the bandit to a wooden stake. After softly soothing it for a few words, he walked into the Pike Syndicate. Boba stated his purpose, but the Pike Syndicate members showed a reluctant expression, claiming that the toll fee had been forcibly taken away by the robber gang. Those robbers had a large number of people and great influence. If they didn't give the money, they would be severely beaten. Boba's attitude was firm. He emphasized that the toll fee must be handed over to the Tusken Raiders, because the Sandy Sea had been the territory of the Tusken Raiders since ancient times. But how could the Pike Syndicate members be willing to pay the money twice? Fortunately, Boba wasn't an unreasonable person. After thinking for a moment, he stated that he would solve this matter. Then he decided to go back to the Tusken Raiders camp first, and would take the tribe members to reason with the robber gang. When Boba rode the bantha back to the camp, the scene in front of him shocked him. There was thick smoke billowing in the camp. A large number of banthas and Tusken Raiders were lying on the ground. The once glorious Tusken Raider tribe had now been completely exterminated. Boba was filled with grief and indignation, recalling the time when he struggled to crawl out of the monster's belly. He was covered in sand and mud, exhausted, and almost in despair. It was the Tusken Raiders who extended a helping hand, and took him in. If it weren't for them, he would have already exposed his body in the desolate desert. At this time, seeing the familiar mark of the robber gang on the tent, Boba instantly understood. It was the robber gang, who had wantonly robbed the Tusken Raiders' water source on ordinary days. Who did it? New and old grudges welled up in his heart. The flame of revenge burned fiercely in Boba's heart. The idea of ridding the people of the scourge became even more firm. Boba endured the grief. According to the tradition of the Tusken Raiders, he cremated his tribe members, and silently bid them farewell. Then he set foot on the path of revenge with the only remaining bantha. When taking a rest on the way, Boba was eating roasted meat. The bantha beside him looked at it eagerly. It licked its mouth with its tongue and wagged its tail gently. Boba understood and threw a piece of roasted meat to it. The bantha chewed it happily. After a while, it actually burped, just as Boba was about to take more roasted meat. Suddenly, a distress signal flare rose in the distance. Boba immediately became alert. He mounted the bantha and galloped towards the source of the signal. After arriving at the destination, Boba found a seriously injured woman lying on the ground. Her breath was weak and the situation was very critical. Without hesitation, he quickly picked up the woman and rushed towards the medical processing station. After arriving at the processing station, Boba found that everyone here seemed strange. Many organs on their bodies had been replaced by machines. He rushed into the operating room with the woman in his arms. The doctor inside was carrying out a transformation treatment. Just by inserting a chip, a surgery was completed. The doctor turned his head. Seeing that Boba was wearing the clothing of the Tusken Raiders, he subconsciously thought that Boba had no money. He told Boba with a look of disdain that on-site treatment wasn't accepted, and an appointment in advance was required. Boba immediately took out a bag of gold coins and threw them on the table. The doctor's attitude changed instantly. He immediately started the surgery. The doctor picked up a scalpel that emitted a blue light and cut open the woman's wound. Then he skillfully replaced several of his own arms with mechanical ones and began the mechanical transformation surgery. Sparks flew during the surgery. After a while, the doctor's arm switched to a gun muzzle and sprayed out flames. Then he picked up a large number of parts from the side and installed them into the woman's abdomen. This series of operations left Boba stunned. Finally, after a complex wiring process, the doctor operated the instrument beside him. he monitored the woman's body operation as the blue and red lubricants flowed in the pipeline. 5 red lights lit up one after another, and the surgery was declared complete. The woman slowly woke up from the coma. She was pleasantly surprised to find that her body no longer hurt. It was as if she had been reborn. After they exchanged their names, Boba learned that the woman was actually the famous assassin Shand. She was also a bounty hunter in the universe. After Shand heard about Boba's tragic experience, in order to repay his favor for saving her life, she resolutely decided to embark on the path of revenge with him. They came near the castle of the robber gang. Shand held a sniper rifle in her hand and carefully observed the guarding situation of the castle. She noticed a spaceship, took off the flying ball from the sniper rifle, and controlled it to fly towards the castle. The flying ball accurately scanned and recorded the terrain while flying. At the same time, it skillfully avoided the inspection of the guards. Before long, a detailed topographic map was transmitted to their hands. Based on this, the two fully understood the patrol route of the guards and the layout of the castle. Before setting out, Boba reluctantly bid farewell to the band that had accompanied him for a long time. Then he and Shand found the best passage to the castle. Shand took out the laser corrosive agent and gently scratched it on the railing of the castle. In an instant, the iron fence was cut off. The two opened the sewer manhole cover in the kitchen and sneaked in quietly. At this time, 2 robots were preparing dinner in the kitchen. There was soup boiling in the pot. A one-eyed frog tried to escape. It was discovered by one of the robots. The robot knocked it back with a soup spoon and covered the pot lid. Just then, the slight sound of the manhole cover rubbing attracted the attention of the robot. It went up to check and thought it was a mouse. Unexpectedly, Boba suddenly emerged from under the manhole cover and knocked it to the ground. The vegetable-cutting robot immediately assumed an attacking posture. It waved the sharp kitchen knife in its hand and prepared to confront Boba. However, Shand quietly appeared from behind. She sprayed the laser corrosive agent on the neck of the vegetable-cutting robot. The main unit of the robot fell instantly, then it lost its mobility, just as the two were glad that they hadn't triggered the alarm. A mouse-catching robot heard the commotion in the kitchen. It thought there were mice and rushed over in a hurry. However, instead of catching the mouse, it ran into Boba and Shand. Boba saw that this robot had no aggressiveness. He originally wanted to catch it and force it to reveal some information, but the robot was small and agile. It jumped up and down in the kitchen. Boba chased it for a long time but could hardly touch it at all. The mouse-catching robot took the opportunity to hide in the combustion port, trying to escape from the other side, just as it thought it could escape from the kitchen. Shand had already been waiting at the exit. Boba immediately grabbed the mouse-catching robot, but before he could open his mouth to force it to answer, the robot actually reached out and turned off the power switch by itself. Then the two sneaked around in the shadows, running towards the spaceship. Soon they came in front of the spaceship. Just then, a heavy sound of footsteps came. The two of them became alert instantly. They hid behind the dilapidated shelter. Beside the spaceship, 2 wild boar soldiers with sturdy figures and wearing thick armor came. Boba rushed like a black bolt of lightning and quickly knocked down one of them. Shand also dealt with the other one with her precise fighting skills. However, the sound of the fight attracted a large number of guards. As soon as they appeared, they raised their guns and fired. The intensive laser beams intertwined to form a dangerous light net. Shand quickly hid behind the pillar and counterattacked. She shouted at Boba to start the spaceship and that she would block the enemies. Boba rushed into the spaceship without hesitation and ran towards the control room. His hands were moving rapidly on the console. The engine soon emitted a low rumble. Shand found a robot guard preparing to attack and immediately shot and blew it up. At this time, Boba saw more guards swarming in through the porthole. In a critical moment, taking advantage of the opportunity, Shand leaped towards the spaceship and blew up the counterweight block of the gate. The gate fell down and blocked the pursuit of the enemies. Boba controlled the spaceship and rushed out directly. After getting out of danger, the two decided to launch a counterattack against the robber gang that ran amok in the desert. At this moment, the members of the robber gang were driving motorcycles and galloping recklessly. They didn't notice the approaching danger at all. Boba and Shand drove the spaceship and approached quietly. The weapon system was activated instantly. Deadly laser beams poured down. The robbers were caught off guard and had no ability to fight back. The motorcycles exploded, one after another. Boba also prepared an upgraded missile for the leader of the robber gang. As the missile whistled out, the leader of the robber gang was blown to pieces. The robber gang was thus destroyed. They finally avenged the Tusken Raiders. After that, Boba was concerned about the lost Mandalorian armor. He drove the spaceship and came to the place where he had crashed before. He vaguely remembered that the armor was lost here. He turned the spaceship upside down and placed it above the cave entrance. Boba looked through the porthole and saw that the cave was filled with sharp teeth. It exuded a terrifying aura. He thought the monster was dead, so he entered the cave to look for the armor. Just when Boba was concentrating on searching, the monster suddenly lunged. Its thick tentacles wrapped around the spaceship and tried to drag it into the abyss. Boba quickly turned on the laser gun and fired, but it was blocked by the sand. Shan reached out to press the missile launch button, but she couldn't reach it because it was too far away. In an emergency, she unfastened her seatbelt and slid along the inclined floor to the front of the windshield. Just then, the monster opened its huge mouth and pounced. Fortunately, the windshield was sturdy. Shan tried her best to crawl back to the console and pressed the launch switch. A missile popped out outside the spaceship. It fell down along with the shaking of the spaceship and was just caught by the monster's mouth. With a loud bang, the monster was blown to pieces. The spaceship lost the pull of the monster and successfully lifted off. But Boba didn't give up looking for the armor. He searched again. After a while, Boba crawled out of the monster's huge mouth, covered in gastric juice. But in the cave, except for garbage and gastric acid, there was no trace of the armor. The sky gradually became overcast. The two of them decided to rest here first. Early the next morning, Boba and Shan rode the banda and came to Tatooine. It turned out that after making many inquiries, he learned that his armor was in Tatooine. After arriving, the two successfully assassinated the mayor of Tatooine. With their superb skills and close cooperation, and they ascended the throne, becoming the new rulers and started their own era. Boba was about to take over this city composed of many alien races. When he ascended the throne, he wore the cold armor. He exuded a terrifying and cold aura all over his body. Intending to intimidate his soldiers with absolute majesty, all the forces in the city came to show their goodwill one after another. The first one to express support was the burly walrus-like alien. He respectfully presented a box of gold and silver coins. The shining metallic luster reflected his flattering face. In this place where the strong preys on the weak, everyone knew that Boba had extraordinary martial strength. They presented generous gifts just to avoid trouble by spending money. Next was a lithe lizard man. He was seen walking over with precious animal skins in his hands. The animal skins had excellent texture, and it was obvious that they were of great value at a glance. Boba and Shan looked at each other and nodded slightly, quite satisfied with the gift. The third visitor came empty-handed. When he stepped into the hall, he had an arrogant posture and his eyes were full of disdain. He walked straight up to Boba, and actually arrogantly demanded that Boba pay the protection fee to the mayor. Anger welled up in Boba's heart, but thinking that he had just taken power, and his foundation wasn't stable yet, he didn't want to make the matter too big, so he decided to spare his life for the time being. Then he began to deal with the affairs of the city. At this time, the robot butler introduced that these two wild boar brothers were originally the bodyguards of the previous mayor. They were wearing heavy armor and had astonishing combat power. They were loyal to every mayor. Boba knew very well that talents were hard to come by. He immediately pardoned the wild boar brothers and took them under his command. After all the matters were properly arranged, Boba and Shan, according to the usual practice, went to various places in the city to collect the protection fee. They walked into a bustling hotel. Two managers immediately greeted them with beaming smiles. They wanted to refurbish and clean Boba's helmet. Boba understood the meaning behind it, so he calmly handed over his helmet. At this time, the hotel owner hurried over. He looked nervous, fearing that poor hospitality would affect his business. Boba looked around and saw people coming and going in the hotel. Two strange-looking aliens were playing cheerful music. With great concentration, the emotional robot enthusiastically promoted fitness programs. The service robots shuttled through the crowd to meet the customers' needs. The guests were filled with laughter. Boba immediately promised to protect the hotel well, to make the business thrive. When the manager returned the well-maintained helmet, Boba found that it was filled with gold and silver coins. It seemed that the hotel owner was very sensible and knew how to be grateful. The first collection of the protection fee went so smoothly. Boba was very satisfied, but not long after walking out of the hotel, something unexpected happened. A masked person suddenly leaped down from a high place. Then several masked people rushed out from all directions. They quickly opened the energy shields on their arms that emitted an eerie light and surrounded Boba and Shan. Boba reacted quickly and immediately fired an energy cannon, but it was absorbed by the energy shield. During the chaos, Boba's helmet fell off. The Jawas, who had been coveting it for a long time, rushed out like hungry wolves. In the blink of an eye, they divided up the gold in the helmet. Boba looked at the stun baton coming towards him. He resisted and counterattacked at the same time, but he was still hit by the stun baton. Shan also tried to break through, but to no avail. The two were trapped in the middle of the energy shield, and in a desperate situation. If it weren't for the Mandalorian armor, Boba might have already been defeated. Just when the two of them had no solution, a familiar pig's grunt came. It turned out that the wild boar brothers sensed that their master was in trouble and came to the rescue. With their powerful strength, they instantly knocked down a masked person. A gap appeared in the energy formation. Boba seized the opportunity and caught the stun baton with his bare hands. He punched the masked person in the stomach and knocked him to the ground. Then he picked up the stun baton and smashed it on the other person's head. With the addition of the wild boar brothers, the situation was instantly reversed. Seeing that the situation wasn't good, the masked people fled one after another. But how could Boba let them go? He extended his arm and fired a powerful blow. A fleeing enemy was instantly blown to pieces, and the masked person who fled first was desperately running away on the roof. His movements seemed flashy but were actually clumsy. In the eyes of the experienced Shand, this was just a last-ditch effort. Shand quickly chased after him, intercepted him, and then brought him back to the castle. Facing Boba's interrogation, this killer was extremely stubborn and would rather die than submit, even actively put his neck under the blade. And he didn't want to reveal the mastermind behind the scenes. At this time, Shand had an idea and the corners of her mouth turned up. Perhaps he was afraid of monsters. When the killer heard this, his face instantly turned pale. Shand then opened the switch of the secret passage. The killer didn't have time to resist and fell into the darkness. Only his terrified screams were left. With a dull creaking sound, the tightly closed door slowly moved. The killer, who had just looked determined, instantly turned pale, and his eyes were full of fear. His body trembled uncontrollably. He shouted that he was sent by the mayor. However, the only response he got was the sound of the door opening. Unexpectedly, when the door was fully opened, it was a mouse that emerged. The killer then realized that he had been tricked. Shand tied the killer with a rope and paraded him on the street towards the mayor's mansion to show him to the public, to warn all the alien ethnic groups not to have evil intentions. Then she walked straight into the castle where the mayor was. After entering the hall, the receptionist asked Boba indifferently if he had an appointment. Boba's face darkened. The mayor's assistant quickly ran over and led everyone to the office. Boba then threw the killer in front of the mayor. The mayor waved his hand in the face of the questioning. The bodyguard instantly shot the killer dead and destroyed the evidence. Just when the situation between the two sides was tense, the mayor, however, arranged for his assistant to get the tribute that should have been handed over long ago, just because he was afraid of the armor on Boba, and Boba couldn't take action against the mayor. Due to the lack of evidence, he could only leave a harsh word. He told the other party to remember that only if he allowed him to live could he sit in his current position. Just as he turned to leave, a heavy drumbeat sounded outside. Everyone was instantly so scared that they froze in place. The surroundings became extremely quiet. Even the wild boar brothers had an ominous premonition. Boba came outside nervously. He saw two conjoined toads sitting on a large sedan chair in the distance. They were more than 3 meters long and were moving forward with the continuous drumbeats. Boba assumed a fighting stance, and these conjoined toads were exactly the members of the Hutt clan. They were relatives of Jabba, the previous mayor of Tatooine. They came with a land certificate agreement and intended to inherit Jabba's legacy. Boba responded firmly that the territory was won by him. If they wanted to take it away, they had to defeat him first, and the toads also came prepared. They hired strong and fierce gladiators. That was the Wookiee, Black Krrsantan. Black Krrsantan had excellent fighting skills. Looking at the other party's huge body, Boba inside the armor also shuddered, but he still calmly said, even if the other party hired more gladiators, he wasn't afraid at all. The toads also knew that Boba wasn't boasting. It was hard to predict the outcome if they really fought. The toad monster also reminded Boba not to sleep too soundly at night. After saying the harsh words, everyone carried the toad monster in turn to leave. Black Krrsantan showed a fierce expression when he left. This made Boba feel extremely uneasy. After returning to the castle, he realized that only by continuously enhancing his strength could he stand firmly on this land. At this time, a merchant came to ask for help. His water source had been stolen by a group of modified people. Water was extremely valuable in the desert. The merchant asked the mayor to take action to retrieve it, and he was willing to pay double the protection fee. Boba immediately set out with Shand and the wild boar brothers. They found the modified people, who stole the water at the entrance of the alley, asking them where the water source came from. Unexpectedly, the other party bluntly said that it was stolen. From what they said, they learned, it turned out that the water merchants had raised the water price to seek profits. For the modified people who had no source of income, they simply couldn't afford the expensive water, so they were forced to steal it. Boba saw that these modified people each had their own strengths. In order to change this situation, and to make his own power grow stronger and stronger, he took these modified people under his command, making them work for him. Before leaving, Boba ordered the merchant to restore the water price immediately. Otherwise he would have to leave Tatooine. Since then, Boba had a few more young guards. Late at night, Boba was sound asleep in the rejuvenation pod. The pod door was suddenly forced open. Two thick arms choked his neck and threw him out. This person was exactly the gladiator Black Krrsantan. The other party was ordered by the toads to come and assassinate Boba. He had thick skin and tough flesh, even Boba wearing the armor. It was difficult to determine the winner against him. Boba had no ability to resist at all, because the enemy didn't intend to give Boba the opportunity. Why to put on the armor at all? Black Krrsantan took the opportunity and lifted Boba up. although he resisted desperately, as the enemy exerted force with his arms, there was still a cracking sound from Boba's bones. In an emergency, a modified person rushed in. He stabbed a small knife into Black Chrysanthemum's waist, and then nimbly dodged away. Other modified people quickly arrived and surrounded him. At the same time, Shan also appeared in time. She quickly pressed the switch of the dungeon. Black Chrysanthemum grabbed the edge of the dungeon when he was falling. He originally wanted to climb up. Shan picked up the weapon and took out the dart, then resolutely knocked the enemy into the dungeon. He was so angry that he could only roar in the dungeon. Boba, who had almost been assassinated, was extremely angry. Just when Boba and Shan were discussing whether to fight back against Black Chrysanthemum's master, the robot butler reported that the toad monster had come uninvited. The toad monster admitted its mistake and brought out a young monster wearing an eye patch and tied with an iron chain. Boba thought it was going to be another fierce battle. Unexpectedly, the other party came to apologize. It turned out that they were going to leave this planet because the mayor had already sold this place to an alien force. It was the Pike Syndicate that had been defeated by Boba before. Their purpose was to control this planet, so as to sell spice powder to obtain profits. At this moment, the reinforcements of the Pike Syndicate had arrived one after another. There would be a conflict here soon. Before leaving, the Toad Monster even gave Black Chrysanthemum to Boba as a favor. After the Toad Monster left, Boba asked the Wild Boar brothers to release Black Chrysanthemum. He knew that Black Chrysanthemum wouldn't truly follow him at this moment. After that, Boba walked towards the newly acquired pet, preparing to examine this strange creature. He was thinking about how to deal with the upcoming crisis. At this time, a huge rancor beast came into view. Although it was just a month old, its body was covered with sturdy black muscles. Its skin was as hard as armor. The breeder, Tut, introduced that it would recognize whoever it saw for the first time as its father. It was more loyal than a dog. Boba was full of anticipation after hearing this. Then Tut approached the rancor beast and took off its eye patch. The rancor beast slowly opened its eyes and identified Boba in a hazy state. Boba knew very well that this fierce beast would be a powerful help. Just then, the butler rushed to report. He said that the mayor had defected to the Pike Syndicate. Boba quickly instructed Tot to feed the rancor beast meat, to make it grow up quickly. Then he went to the mayor's building with Shand. Inside the mayor's building, when the assistant saw Boba coming, he was so frightened that he trembled, saying wait a moment, and then hid in the utility room, and locked the door. Boba sensed something was wrong and pried open the door with Shand, but there was no one inside. Shand speculated that the assistant had escaped through the back door. She commanded the modified people to pursue immediately. For a moment, the engines roared and dust flew up. The robots were so frightened that they spun around in a panic. Although the assistant had good driving skills, the speed of the motorcycle airship was faster. At a critical moment, he managed to get rid of the pursuit with his quick wits, but in the next second, Boba descended from the sky and blocked his way. The assistant had to reveal the whereabouts of the mayor. At the same time, on the other side of the planet, the interstellar warships of the Pike Syndicate were heading towards the Sansi space station. Reinforcements kept arriving. Boba decided to adopt Shan's suggestion to win over the gladiator Black Chrysanthemum. At this moment, Black Chrysanthemum was drinking to drown his sorrows in the bar. He was burning with anger when he saw the gecko-like people having fun. After drinking a glass of wine, blue lightning flashed on his fists. He stood up and threw the gecko-like person out. This scene was seen by Boba, but Boba didn't stop him. In the next second, a drunk gecko-like person smashed a wine bottle at Black Chrysanthemum. Just as Black Chrysanthemum was about to lose his temper, the landlady suddenly appeared. She said that if he didn't stop, he would have to compensate for the cost of the broken items. Black Chrysanthemum didn't want others to know that he had no money. After hesitating, he removed one of the gecko-like person's arms. After compensating for the relevant expenses, he left the bar. Black Chrysanthemum wandered alone in the street. At this time, Boba called out to him. He also offered a high reward, hoping that he would join his team. Black Chrysanthemum was immediately tempted after hearing this and agreed to join. With the addition of Black Chrysanthemum, Boba invited all the landlords of the planet to discuss how to deal with the Pike Syndicate that sold spice powder. Although the spice powder was harmful, the huge transportation fees offered by the Pike Syndicate tempted the landlords. Some people questioned Boba's strength. Boba remained silent. The rancor beast at his feet gave the answer. Everyone was so frightened by this scene that their legs went weak. Coupled with Black Chrysanthemum behind them, it made these landlords dare not speak out despite their anger. Boba understood that he couldn't expect them to be completely obedient. He only hoped that they wouldn't join hands with the Pike Syndicate. Under Boba's combination of soft and hard tactics, the landlords promised that they wouldn't collude. Then they left one by one, but Boba knew that even if they weren't his enemies, there were still not enough people to deal with the Pike Syndicate. For this reason, Shan helped Boba find the famous Mandalorian, Din Djarin. At this moment, Din Djarin was in a battle. He held the Darksaber and slashed through the aliens. but because he was not familiar with the Darksaber, the more he swung it, the heavier it felt. He even cut off a piece of flesh from his own thigh, but he still gritted his teeth and completed the bounty task. Din Djarin returned to the tribe and reported his work to the armorer. The Mandalorian, Vela, helped him deal with the wound. Din Djarin also learned the significance of the Darksaber from the armorer. The armorer seriously informed him that this sword had a history of more than 1,000 years. Only by winning it in a duel could one lead the Mandalorians. In this way, it could ensure that the leader had enough strength, otherwise, it would bring disaster. The previous leader obtained the sword without a duel, and didn't have absolute strength to protect the homeland. In the end, it led to the fall of Mandalore, and it was trampled by the Imperial invaders. The security robots and flying snake robots leveled their homeland to the ground. Most people lost their lives, and the survivors struggled to survive. After that, Din Djarin began to practice swordsmanship in order to become the leader. However, the Darksaber was heavy, every swing was extremely strenuous, but the armorer still taught him very patiently. Just then, Vela came. He thought that Din Djarin wasn't worthy of being the leader, so he wanted to obtain the Darksaber and become the leader himself. Upon hearing the other party's challenge to fight, Din Djarin immediately drew his sword in response. Vela also drew out a short knife and activated the light shield. The duel erupted instantly. Vela first blocked the Darksaber with the light shield. The short knife stabbed Din Djarin's shoulder, but the power of the Darksaber itself was very strong. It instantly absorbed the energy of the light shield, and also shattered Vela's short knife. But he wasn't without his reputation. His strength was tremendous. His ancestors had even been the leaders of Mandalore. He grabbed Din Djarin and threw him out of the space corridor. Din Djarin's Darksaber also fell to the ground. Vela leaped down. He grabbed Din Djarin and crashed him into an iron pillar, then picked up the Darksaber on the ground. But he didn't have the power to use this sword either. The Darksaber was equally heavy in his hand. Din Djarin took the opportunity to draw out the vibroblade. With his agility, he circled behind Vela and put the blade on his neck. The armorer announced the end of the duel. Unfortunately, Din Djarin had violated the Mandalorian creed and was an apostate. He needed to go to the living spring of Mandalore to wash away his guilt, but the living spring had been destroyed, so he couldn't become the new leader. Din Djarin had to pack his things and go to Tatooine to find his old friend Boba. As the spaceship headed towards Tatooine and slowly docked on the ground, Din Djarin came to the machinery factory. He spent all his savings to customize a luxurious spaceship. With the rooster crowing, two robots pushed out the spaceship. After checking, Din Djarin sat in the cockpit satisfactorily. He pressed the ignition button, and the engine ejects blue flames. The spaceship rose vertically into the air. Under Din Djarin's control, it passed through the clouds and reached outer space. Din Djarin was enjoying the pleasure of high-speed flight. In the next second, he was intercepted by the interstellar guards. For speeding and driving without a license, the guards asked him for his documents. Din Djarin pressed the hyperspace jump button. The spaceship immediately disappeared into the vast universe. Then he came to Boba's castle. After greeting Boba, he listened to Shan's introduction of the current situation. At this time, many territories of Tatooine had been divided up by the Pike Syndicate. The biggest problem was the shortage of manpower. It was difficult to confront the Pike Syndicate head-on. In this time of crisis, Din Djarin came up with an idea for everyone, that was to call for reinforcements. On the other end of this planet, there was a free town that wasn't controlled by anyone, and the mayor was Din Djarin's old friend, Cobb. He had a group of capable and battle-hardened soldiers under his command. Din Djarin asked Cobb to go and support Boba, to drive away the Pike Syndicate that was destroying the planet, but the bartender said that they had renamed this place Free Town. They wouldn't get involved in other people's disputes. Looking at Cobb's troubled expression, Din Djarin didn't ask him to make a decision immediately. Then he drove the spaceship and left, because he believed that Cobb would definitely choose justice. But as soon as Din Djarin left, Cobb felt a murderous intent. A figure looking like a cowboy in the distance slowly approached. It was not until the other party got closer that he could see clearly. The person who came was the notorious bounty hunter, Kira. Her eyes, as big as lanterns, exuded a murderous look. This made Cobb and his subordinates feel nervous. Kira's request was very simple. That wasn't to let Cobb help Boba. But if Cobb, who was famous all over the world, backed down, he would probably be laughed at by the world. So he firmly refused Kira. Seeing that Cobb was so determined, Kira then showed the Desert Eagle. Cobb also reached for his waist and assumed a dueling stance. But in terms of strength, he was after all not as good as Kira, who had experienced many battles. He was also not as fast as the other party. In this way, he fell under Kira's gun. After winning, she turned and left. Then she returned to the headquarters and reported her work to the leader of the Pike Syndicate. After learning that things were going smoothly, the Pike Syndicate decided to carry out the next step. Then two members of the Pike Syndicate carried a rice cooker, walked into the bustling hotel, and sat on the sofa. But before the waiter could come forward, the two of them stood up and left in a hurry. The landlady looked at the two people who had left and was very puzzled. Immediately after that, the hotel exploded. The Pike Syndicate told everyone through the explosion that this was the consequence of siding with Boba. When Boba arrived at the scene, the beautifully decorated hotel had already been reduced to nothing. Din Djarin also rushed back from Cobb's place, but they still didn't know that Cobb had sacrificed for justice. They formulated a battle plan. The modified people were in charge of monitoring the Pike Syndicate. Black Krrsantan was in charge of watching over the territory of the Gecko-like people. The others kept a close eye on the landlords, but they waited for a long time, and the Pike Syndicate didn't show up. It turned out that they attacked Boba's subordinates first. A group of aliens fired at the modified people. The modified people asked Black Krrsantan for help, but he was surrounded by the Gecko-like people. When he went to support, Boba immediately called the Wild Boar brothers, but he was attacked with an iron rod by the subordinates of the landlords. Finally, he was forced off the cliff and his life or death was unknown. Shand, who learned about the situation, decided to go to the rescue. Before she left, she also got the location of the leader of the Pike Syndicate from her assistant, so she mounted the magnetic levitation desert mecha and rushed to the rescue scene at high speed. She asked the modified people to meet up with Boba, then drove the mecha to deal with the leader of the Pike Syndicate. At this time, all the members of the Pike Syndicate had been mobilized and surrounded the hotel. A fierce battle was about to break out. Boba told Din Djarin to run away quickly, but how could Din Djarin, who abided by the Mandalorian creed, be a coward? He firmly decided to advance and retreat together with Boba. Boba immediately opened his jetpack and flew into the air to fight against the Pike Syndicate. Din Djarin also flew over to fight alongside Boba. The two bounty hunters wearing Mandalorian armor caught the Pike Syndicate off guard. Although the surprise attack was effective, they couldn't withstand the large number and power of the Pike Syndicate. The sniper hiding in the dark shot down Boba's blaster. Before Boba could get up, more reinforcements from the Pike Syndicate arrived. Although they were protected by the Mandalorian armor, in the face of intensive firepower, Boba and Din Djarin were still put in a passive position. The armor also made a crackling sound. Suddenly, the enemy was knocked down by an unknown object. A desert war vehicle carrying armed forces rushed towards them at high speed. This was exactly the power of Freetown. Their purpose wasn't to help Boba, it was to fight for the injured Mayor Cobb, and to fight for the peace of the planet. Under the cover of the desert war vehicle, Boba managed to get away. But even with the appearance of the power of Freetown, they still couldn't defeat the Pike Syndicate. The Pike Syndicate was afraid of the firepower of the war vehicle. They all retreated behind the cover and waited for an opportunity. The two sides were thus locked in a stalemate. Just then, the Pike Syndicate suddenly fled quickly. Everyone thought they had won. They couldn't help but cheer loudly. But years of experience told Din Djarin, the more such a situation was, the more carefully it needed to be dealt with. Sure enough, through the detector, they saw that the Scorpion Annihilators were slowly approaching, and there was more than one. In the face of the high-tech products of the galaxy, everyone didn't dare to be negligent. They all picked up their weapons and were ready to fight. But what was even more terrifying was that the Scorpion had an indestructible energy shield. Ordinary laser beams couldn't penetrate it at all, and it wouldn't cause any damage to the Scorpion. Even Boba's ultimate weapon couldn't destroy the energy shield. In an emergency, Boba asked Din Djarin to attract the firepower of the Scorpion and lead it out of the city, and he himself went to call for reinforcements. Boba's departure made the Scorpion aim at the sky. Din Djarin took the opportunity to hide on the other side, opened fire on the Scorpion, and led it to an open area. After a while, there was a sound that shook the ground all around. It was Boba's Rancor Beast that came. The slobbering Rancor Beast appeared. It grabbed the person next to it and swallowed him. At this time, the Scorpion robot fired at it frantically. The Rancor Beast jumped to the ground without hesitation. It raised its paw and slapped the Scorpion. Although the Scorpion was protected by an energy shield, but the strength of the Rancor Beast was really too great. One slap weakened the defense of the shield. The Rancor Beast wanted to destroy the Scorpion, but it was hit in the shoulder by a shot from the Scorpion, and stumbled and fell to the ground. And the production of this kind of Scorpion was extremely low. Although the Pike Syndicate was rich, they only bought 2 of them, and the Rancor Beast was even rarer and more precious. They were creatures living in a dark environment. Their body length was between 7 and 10 meters. Their bodies were covered with muscles, and their skin was even harder than armor. They lived on meat and were extremely fierce. In terms of combat power, I'm afraid that 4 Scorpion robots were no match for the Rancor Beast. The Rancor Beast used its hard skin to block the attack. It stretched out its huge hand, grabbed the Scorpion, and resolutely destroyed the central processing unit of the Scorpion. Then it tore it to pieces. The Scorpion instantly turned into a pile of scrap metal. Everyone couldn't help but cheer when they saw the victory. However, just then, a ruthless bounty hunter walked over slowly. It was exactly the notorious Kira. Kira knew the weakness of the Rancor Beast. She sprayed hot flames at it. The rancor beast fled the scene in a hurry. Because it was afraid of fire, Boba picked up the blaster cannon on the ground and decided to fight Cara to the death. The duel between the two bounty hunters, it only took an instant to determine the winner. Cara's speed was very fast. This was due to the breather implanted in her body. Boba tried to counterattack with flames, but the other party easily dodged. She shot and knocked Boba down again. Then she crouched down and took off his helmet. Just when Cara pulled the trigger, Boba turned sideways to avoid the shooting. He took the opportunity to shoot down the other party's blaster and began to counterattack her. Cara once told the young Boba that it wasn't difficult to deal with clones, but in the end, she died at the hands of Boba, this clone. And on the other end of Tatooine, the leader of the Pike Syndicate was also killed by Shand, who sneaked in secretly. Thus, Tatooine returned to its former tranquility. The Interstellar Space Station also resumed its flights. The streets became lively again. Boba also received the respect and love of the residents. Just as he said before, Jabba liked to subdue people by force. He, on the other hand, preferred to convince people with virtue. His loyal subordinates also recovered. They gathered around and imagined a bright future. The story ended here. This drama series, as a spin-off of the Star Wars series, opened a new chapter for us about Boba Fett. After escaping from the mouth of the giant beast, he tried to establish his rule on the planet Tatooine. This drama is well produced. The pictures present the fantasy of the interstellar world. The action scenes are gripping. Boba shows his extraordinary skills when fighting. At the same time, it delves deep into his heart, shows the growth and transformation of the character, and enriches the character image of Boba. However, the rhythm of the dual-line narrative in the first half is a bit slow, making it difficult for the audience to get into the story quickly. In terms of character setting, the once cold-blooded bounty hunter has transformed into a kind-hearted leader. There is a serious sense of disconnection from the previous image. In the later part of the plot, Boba even became a supporting character. The elements of the Mandalorians overshadowed the main plot, causing the story's main line to deviate. But in any case, it has added new stories to the Star Wars universe. It's a drama series worth watching. Friends who are interested can watch the original film, The Book of Boba Fett. If you like this video, you might as well like, comment, and subscribe. Let's meet more wonderful films in the next issue.